This is also meant to be slightly more of an interactive session. I can happily sit up here and talk for 20 or 30 minutes, but if you have questions, raise your hand and we can talk about pretty much anything, including what I do or things I've learned while running a startup. So one of the things that I guess one of the things that I've done in terms of counseling, dozens of entrepreneurs over the past few years is really just kind of started to come down, learn the standard things that a startup founder needs to do, and more particularly a startup founder who once was a developer or who still may be a developer. I think there are different things that we as developers are used to doing that startup founders have to do differently, and so that's why I'm really here to talk about. So this iPad is like really cool, but it keeps on locking this. All right, so what I want to do today is really talk about the cardinal rules of building a company. This is really based on just kind of my experience just in terms of counseling entrepreneurs and experiences I've really learned firsthand. I've had to live over the past year or two, while building a couple different companies. So, who here is familiar with the lean startup principle? Okay, who here is not familiar with the lean startup principle? All right, buy the book, read anything by Eric Ries. It'll change your world, because that's honestly like one of the biggest things that you have to learn as a developer in order to actually start kind of really build a viable startup is, and the best way to boil down the lean startup principle is the realization that you're not building a cool product. Contactually isn't a web application. It's not an iPhone application. It's not an Android application. It's a company. It's a company that has values and has customers and has revenue a little bit, hopefully a little bit more soon. And I mean, that's kind of one of the things that is so incredibly important. I mean, I can't tell you how many different products I've had that are just piles of code. But Contactually is more than that now. And so I mean, one of the things I've had to learn, for example, is I'm not really just building a cool product. It's all about getting more customers. And the lean startup principle is really focused around that. It's really focused around, well, how do you take an idea and instead of just building a product out, you vet it with customers and you get users while you're building a product. Because I mean, if we were to look at the prototype that I had of Contactually around 2 years ago, it is completely different than what we had now. And what we have now is really a result of good customer development, talking to a lot of our users, talking to industry experts, looking at metrics, and trying to understand, well, this is what we have, and this is what users like about it, and then this is what users actually really need. And then more importantly, this is what they'll pay for. Because if you're building a consumer application, you can focus on overall metrics and everything like that, but you also have to really care about what's going to make you money in that. So I mean, honestly, one of the things that I really recommend that entrepreneurs do, especially developers, and this is probably the hardest thing because like me, you're probably an introvert. Talk to as many people as possible. Talk to your customers. Go on Craigslist. Ask people a bunch of questions about what do you need? What do you need? What do you actually need? And I guess the rule of thumb is when you're kind of trying to vet an idea, if you can't find 10 people to talk to about your idea and 10 people who really like your idea, well, just think about who's going to actually use your application? Who's going to care when you have actually spent 3 months actually building a product and getting it out in the market? Because I mean, I built really cool things that I think is great. I think it's going to change the world. And I never really talked to them about it, or I tried talking to a couple people, and they didn't really seem so interested. And I'm like, oh no, they'll just once they see the full product, they'll totally understand. Guess what happened to those? So I mean, that's kind of one of the things that I really, really strongly recommend that everyone do. This is probably the hardest thing. The ability to bring it every single day is probably one of the hardest things that you have to do as a startup founder. I mean, because when you're a software developer, can kind of come in, you can kind of walk into the office in the morning, sit down, open Jira or Pivotal Tracker, and see, okay, this is what I have to do today. Anyone who's been in a startup knows that that could not be further from the truth in terms of what you have to do. It's really just kind of understanding, understanding what you need to do, understanding what will push the business forward every single day. I mean, we have business meetings every morning where we're always talking about the metrics and how much, and how much revenue we're bringing in, and how many customers we have, and the competitive sphere and everything like that. And it's a totally different world. Paul Graham really talked about the maker versus manager schedule, and makers get to come in and they get to build product, they get to write code. Managers have to come in and have to almost figure out what they need to do. And as a developer turned founder, that's kind of one of the biggest challenges you have, is really just the ability to come in every single day and figure out, well, what is going to push the company forward. So this is kind of an obvious question. Who here has had a really bad day at work recently? Like a really bad day. Okay. Startups, you'll have absolutely terrible days, but you'll have absolutely awesome days. Now, who here has had an awesome day in the past 10 days? Okay. Now, who here has a terrible day and an awesome day the exact same day? All right, 3 people. Okay, you guys are obviously startups. It's kind of understanding the ups and downs that accompany a traditional startup venture. That is probably one of the hardest things that you have to deal with. As a developer, you obviously run into issues all the time. You can spend 3 days chasing down some terrible SSL bug that only happens in some weird version of Chrome. But as a startup founder, you may get 3 no's from an investor in a day, which has happened before. But at the same time, you have extreme highs. There are days where we've been on the front page of newspapers. There are days when we get emails from users and just talking about how much they love our product. And believe me, the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows are incredibly hard to get around. But honestly, one of the things that I've learned is, you're just going to have them. One of the things that I look at is, over the span of a month, well, how many good days did we have and how many bad days did we have? And I think that's one of the things that, may seem just like, boilerplate evidence. It's like, yes, you'll hear things about you'll have good days, you'll have bad days. But coming as someone who's actively going through this right now, I can tell you Monday was probably one of the worst days I've had in a month, and then Tuesday was awesome for different reasons that I can't really explain right now. So that's kind of one of the things that I just kind of want to let you know as a developer. You kind of normally got to come in, you got to focus on a problem, fix it, keep moving on. There's that kind of safety layer of knowing that you get to focus on the same thing. But yeah, I've had days, very recently where, I wonder, will Contactually be around next month? But it's really getting around that is what's so important to do. This is actually, and I've kind of talked about a bunch about this, and my startup Contactually is really about helping you manage and improve your professional relationships. But talk to everyone. And yeah, as an introverted developer, I would love to just sit in my cubicle and code all day. But one of the things I've had to really force myself to do over the past, especially 18 months, is talk to everyone. So who here is in a startup right now? All right, who here has talked to investors recently?